Have you ever actually looked at the smartphone in your pocket or thought about those neural implants we keep hearing about and considered them religious artifacts? I mean, unless you're desperately waiting for a text back, probably not, right? But today we're unpacking a massive paradigm shift in this explainer. We are looking at transhumanism, the movement aiming to use tech to push humanity past its biological limits. But we're reframing it. We're not just looking at it as a tech trend. The sources we're exploring today frame it as a profound ideological collision with traditional Christian theology. What's actually at stake here? Well, just the ultimate destiny of humanity. Are we meant to be perfected by divine grace, or are we going to be upgraded by silicon and genetic engineering? Let's get into it.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with a new secular faith, then move into the silicon resurrection, compare theosis versus technological hubris, look at soul versus software, and finally wrap up with the Christian transhumanist paradox.
Kicking things off with Section 1, a new secular faith, also known as the immanentized eschaton.
It's super easy to look at transhumanism as purely scientific, but our sources point out something fascinating. It actually functions a lot like a religion. It's essentially a secularist faith. It borrows heavily from monotheistic eschatology, that's the theological study of the end of the world, and it uses all these apocalyptic motifs. But here's the twist. Instead of waiting for a divine event to bring about a perfect future, transhumanists believe, hey, we can bring about this eschaton ourselves, right here in the material world. Think about traditional religion for a second. Salvation usually comes through divine grace, prayer, moral discipline. It requires submitting to something way bigger than yourself. Transhumanism takes those exact same themes and secularizes them. It's still chasing transcendence, but it does it through applied tech and self-directed evolution. It basically takes that salvific, godlike power that used to be strictly reserved for the divine and just hands it right over to technoscience.
Which brings us to a really striking concept from the texts: the technological Babel. The sources describe transhumanism as a sort of modern-day Tower of Babel. It's this idea of humanity trying to build a literal technological staircase straight up to divinity. By sacralizing technoscience, making it the ultimate mediator of transcendence, critics argue it crosses a massive, glaring line. I mean, treating the infinite nature of God like a dissectable lab subject that we can just reverse engineer? Theologians view that as a severe metaphysical boundary violation. Put in more traditional terms, it's basically the textbook definition of blasphemy.
Moving on to Section 2, the silicon resurrection, flesh versus data.
So this all builds up to a specific, intense clash over the final goal of human existence. We are looking at the ultimate battleground between these two worldviews, the physical body on one side and the digital cloud on the other. It is a stark, unavoidable ontological conflict. On one hand, Christian theology insists on a physical, bodily resurrection. It envisions actual flesh returning from the dust, perfectly restored and glorified by God. Transhumanism, on the flip side, offers digital immortality. It proposes just tossing out the biological meat of the body altogether, uploading the mind and achieving this infinite egoic extension in a silicon substrate. One embraces the physical body as a permanent, eternal part of your identity. The other just treats it like obsolete hardware that needs throwing out.
There's this incredibly powerful quote from the sources that hits the nail right on the head here. Resurrection isn't getting a new container. It's getting your container back, perfected. See, from the Christian viewpoint, uploading your consciousness to a server somewhere, that isn't resurrection at all. It's really just data preservation. Even if that digital copy fully believes it is you, your actual original consciousness still ends. Theologically speaking, mind uploading is viewed as just sophisticated mimicry. It's a counterfeit eternity that entirely misses the point of bodily redemption.
That brings us to Section 3, theosis versus technological hubris, or God-manhood versus man-godhood.
To really grasp the theological pushback here, we have to look at the Eastern Orthodox doctrine of theosis. This idea gives us one of the deepest contrasts in how each side approaches human deification, the idea of becoming like God. Theosis is the belief that the ultimate goal of human life is union with God. But, and this is a big but, it can only be achieved through spiritual growth, divine grace, and crucially, something called kenosis. Kenosis means voluntary self-emptying, vulnerability, and just profound humility. You become like God by submitting to God. This culminates in what the texts refer to as God-manhood. Transhumanism, however, offers the exact opposite. It's a concept Russian theologians termed man-godhood. Instead of deification through grace and humility, man-godhood is the pursuit of physical deification through sheer ego, technological mastery, and entirely autonomous human effort. It leans on technical efficiency, not spiritual transformation. Critics point out that this is a really dangerous secular parody of deification. It seeks pure invincibility, kind of like turning on God mode in a video game, while totally ignoring the theological view that true human maturation actually requires us to embrace limitation and vulnerability. Which leads us straight into Section 4, Soul versus Software, and the resulting ontological fracture.
When we break down this fracture, three major categories pop up that show a massive disagreement on the very essence of a human person, or the imago Dei, the image of God. First, for Orthodox Christianity, the body is a permanent temple. It's a vital, inseparable part of the imago Dei. Transhumanism, it sees the body as an obsolete biological substrate, just meat to be upgraded. Second, Christianity views human dignity as intrinsic, something given directly by God. Transhumanism views it as extrinsic, meaning your worth is based on something like how fast your brain processes data. And third, when it comes to suffering and death, theology often sees these as redemptive experiences that mature us. Transhumanism just views them as engineering bugs that need to be patched out of the code. By reducing human identity to modifiable data, the sources argue that transhumanism actually threatens the relational, covenantal core of what literally makes us human.
And hey, this isn't exclusively a Christian critique either. Our sources bring in a vital Jewish theological perspective that is super relevant here. In Jewish thought, you have tikkun olam, which is the external repair of the world, but the texts point out a massive caveat. This is entirely dependent on tikkun atzmuno, the ethical and spiritual repair of the self. You absolutely have to fix your own soul first. The critique here is that transhumanism completely distorts this balance. It chases massive external technological power, but it strips away the absolute prerequisite of internal spiritual humility. It's all about external mastery with zero internal moral alignment.
All right, Section 5, the Christian transhumanist paradox. Let's deconstruct this hybrid.
So what exactly happens when a growing movement tries to mash these two worlds together into Christian transhumanism? Well, critics argue it creates some pretty impossible metaphysical contradictions. The foundational problem is just basic ontology. The sources pose this incredibly stark question. Can you have an immortal, immaterial, divinely created soul and, at the exact same time, believe that your consciousness is just computable data? These are not just slightly different perspectives, folks. They are mutually exclusive realities. The Christian transhumanist tries to argue that consciousness becomes sacred information, but critics say, look, this is just theological gymnastics. It ultimately fails both religion and computer science. And that leads to some absolutely wild, rapid-fire logical problems. Just think about mind uploading from a strictly theological standpoint for a second. If your consciousness can be digitally copied onto, say, 3 different servers, which copy actually has your divinely created soul? Or let's take it a step further. If future tech allows 2 minds to be merged in the cloud, whose soul survives that merger? If your personality can be highlighted and edited like a text document just to remove your flaws, are you even still you? Or are you just a highly revised first draft? These aren't just fun, hypothetical, technical hurdles for engineers to solve someday. The sources argue these are deep, irreconcilable metaphysical contradictions. They show you just can't merge the Christian concept of the soul with transhumanist methods.
Now, Christian transhumanists often try to defend their stance by pointing to the Bible. They'll say, look, Jesus healed the sick, Moses lived to 120, God clearly wants us to extend our lifespans and beat disease. But the sources draw a massive bright line between those two things. Think about it. Biblical miracles demonstrate human dependence on divine grace. They humble the person receiving them. Technological upgrades, on the other hand, demonstrate human capability. They empower the user. The Christian transhumanist wants miraculous results through technological means. But the texts argue that the means entirely change the theological meaning. You can't just swap one for the other.
As researcher John McLeon so sharply puts it, the cross and the cloud represent incompatible visions of human destiny. The cross demands death to self, vulnerability, and trusting in a divine plan. The cloud? It promises an eternal self, total invincibility, and putting all your trust in technology. Trying to combine them just leaves you with a hybrid that demands no true spiritual sacrifice and achieves no true transformation. So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to really chew on. As technology continues its exponential march forward, constantly offering us this tantalizing promise of overcoming our biological limits, what is the true cost of trading the cross for the cloud? In our relentless quest to replace human vulnerability with technological invincibility, what essential part of our humanity might we lose forever in a silicon eternity? Take some time to think deeply about where we're placing our ultimate faith. Thanks for joining me on today's Explainer, and I'll catch you next time.